A lot of parents are in that survival mode themselves, where, they're just constantly battling one anxiety after the next anxiety. And because there's no sense of calm and consistency within them, then they don't know how to create it in their children either.
Welcome to True North Alignment. There becomes a point where strategy is no longer the deciding factor. What matters most is the state that you're building from, for this shapes every decision, every move, and every result. When you're aligned, things work, and when you're not, they don't. This is where purpose becomes inevitable. I'm Keith Hodge. Let's begin. Welcome back to True North Alignment, where purpose becomes inevitable. Today's guest is Helen Hicks, and she is a licensed professional clinical counselor. Welcome, Helen.
Thank you so much, Keith, for having me. I'm really very excited for today.
Where are you joining us from in the world, Helen?
San Diego, California.
And I would imagine North Alignment is very linked to your work as a professional clinical counselor. What is it to be aligned for you?
For me, I guess the step one is knowing myself. I think before anybody can align themselves with anything or anyone, you really have to know who you are. And that way you can sort through, well, who or what is going to match, who you are and who you show up as in life. And I think way too often people get lost because there's so much information out there. There's so many people saying, do this, go there, go that. This is what you should do. This is who you should be. And it's so easy for people to lose that internal compass of, but who am I and who really matches and what really matches for me?
Absolutely. And I would say for some people, it's not even a case of losing it because it was never developed, right? So they've been
Right.
lost their whole life. And then they're listening to us of like, well, yeah, I know myself. Do I? Or don't I? So where does someone start in this process of knowing themselves?
I think you just start with questions. Start asking yourself, like, if you had to describe yourself in this type of setting, in a podcast to an audience, how would you start describing yourself? What would you say about you? And where is that information coming from? Are you simply repeating what you've heard other people tell you? Oh, well, you're really nice and you're sweet and you're intelligent. Or are you really tuning into you and your thoughts and reflections about your own self? And sometimes what you think about you doesn't always match what other people have told you.
I know when I was a kid, I really didn't have a very strong sense of knowing myself. I used to copy my brother, like, so I'd end up with the same shoes as him because, like, oh, he must be cool, right? And like, somewhere in my journey, I had to face the fact that I really didn't know myself, and there was impacts of that all over my life. How does someone best identify that they are living life through a role, would you say, Helen?
Okay. There's a saying that I picked up a few years ago, and I find it to be so very true that I've just kind of repeated it. So I'm repeating it here again today, where the truth doesn't lie in words or behavior. The truth lies in how you feel. And so, like, that is where I think people really have to start. I mean, even the example that you gave, I think that's where most people start. You start by emulating someone or something that you idolize, that you say, oh, wow, that person is cool. That person is really nice. I would like to have the things that they have. I would like to have friends like those. And I would like to do things like that. And so you emulate, you know, who you idolize. And I think that's most people's starting point. But at some point in time, you do have to stop and you have to ask yourself, but how does this make me feel? When I do these things, how do I feel about it? Does it feel like it is meshing with me and you have a sense of calm and this feels right to you? Or does it feel kind of uncomfortable, but yet you're pushing yourself to keep doing it because you think that's what you should do? So I like to come back to that internal feeling that your truth is always going to be an experience that you have. It's going to be a sense of, yes, this is really coming together for me. It feels good for me, even though sometimes it's not always comfortable because things that are new to us are naturally uncomfortable. So it's not always about, yes, this is comfortable, but just understanding, but there's a sense of good to it.
For me,
knowing is one of the senses, and I would say it's the greatest sense and operates in the heart. Is this something you agree? How, like where does someone connect with their knowing?
Absolutely. I agree with that statement. It is, I would agree with the sense of knowing. We're using different words, but I think we have the same meaning. So, knowing is, it is that connection with your emotional self, that heart piece that we talk about is not necessarily, the physical heart that's pumping blood, but, where a lot of us align with our emotional self and what feels good to us and what feels right. And another thing that I like to throw out there to people is I think every adult out there in life has had a moment where somebody has said something to you, and somewhere inside you, you're like, "Uh," you know, that person's full of ish. Like you just have that kind of sense, that sense of knowing, like you said. And your truth is like the opposite of that, because somebody can say something to you and you can be like, yeah, yeah, like, yeah, I get that. That really kind of meshes with me. That feels right to me. And I think it's about people understanding that's the feeling, that's the knowing that they should be seeking after.
So speak to me about emotions. Like how do emotions impact your clients?
All sorts of ways. So, what I try to share with people, because I think a lot of people that I've worked with, they come to me from a place of being afraid of their emotions, of feeling like their emotions are so big and they're so powerful and they're so overwhelming. And they're these things that they can't control. And, they're just messing up everything because they're just so big, I would say. So I try to kind of first normalize this in a sense that your emotions serve the same purpose as your five senses, see, hear, taste, touch, smell. They're just there to give you feedback about the pieces of your environment that you cannot readily see. And you're still experiencing those pieces of your environment, but it's not a sign showing up and saying, hey, this is a really bad situation. You should probably try to get away from this. They can't show up with a sign. So we experience those pieces of our environment through our emotions. And it's not to be afraid of them, but it's to learn how to interpret them for yourself. Because how I may experience, disappointment may different. It may be a different experience for you and how you experience disappointment when it shows up for you. And it's being able to tune into, hey, I'm experiencing something emotionally. What label do I want to put on this? What do I want to call this? Because it's important to know what to call it so that you can remember it and you can incorporate, oh, yeah, the last time I felt this way, I did this and this is what helped. So I look at emotions as they're there giving you feedback about your environment. So when they show up, take a moment, pause, try to have, a conversation with yourself in terms of, okay, what does this mean? What is this trying to tell me about this situation? And a lot of times people just misinterpret that. They get into situations, and if they feel negative about that situation, then a lot of times they internalize it as, well, I must be broken. There must be something wrong with me that I can't enjoy this the way other people are enjoying the same thing, rather than being able to say, but maybe this situation isn't for me. Maybe it's not my truth. Maybe it's not really the thing that I think I want.
So it comes back to knowing oneself again, and the space is giving us feedback through our body, like what the external world is coming. Or how do I say this best? Like our body, our emotional experience is showing us whether things fit or not. Is this what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely. So instead of, kind of like the square peg into the circle, you can feel the square peg, you can see the circle and all that kind of stuff. This is more of a sense of, well, if you couldn't see those things, you know, you would utilize other senses of being able to compare and contrast and saying, okay, well, this situation feels like this, but I'm not matching, that particular situation. Other people are saying this situation should make you feel good, but I'm not particularly feeling good. And so that's saying something about me, that this isn't matching with me. Not that I'm broken, but this isn't.
Absolutely. And let's speak a little bit more about emotion. I think a lot of the audience that follow are interested in the topic of their emotions and ultimately how to heal them. And so we can explore how you do that. For me, emotion is past based. Like I find very little emotion is new. It's like actually being experienced somewhere in the past, and then the current situation brings the same emotion up. Is this something you see yourself, or do you see that new emotions get created?
I do see both. A lot of people that I'm working with in more of a counseling, psychotherapy space, a lot of that is based on past emotions because people have had certain experiences and things happened in those situations. And anything that happens currently that reminds them of those past situations in which they didn't feel good, they didn't feel safe, you know, it was traumatizing for them sometimes, they automatically go back to that same emotion of when you're in this type of setting or experience, this is how you should feel. And so with a lot of people, I'm then working with them to say that was appropriate then because something dangerous was happening then. And that was a 100% appropriate emotional reaction to that particular situation. But right here, right now is not 100% that same situation. And so even though there may be a small piece of now that relates to then, this isn't the same thing. And therefore, it's okay for you to have a different emotional reaction to the now instead of just repeating what happened then. And that's when I see a lot of the trauma responses that people have, that you have been so hardwired that anything that is slightly, connected to that past experience, you're reacting the same way all over again without taking a moment to really decipher, but is this the same? And does this situation truly elicit that same response? Or is something different, really appropriate for this moment? So I do work with people in trying to establish, okay, what was then and how it most likely served its purpose then, but how it may not be serving the purpose now.
And you said you also encounter people who are experiencing emotions newly. Can you explain what that could look like with a client?
Okay. So, as much of a vocabulary as we have, as human beings, adults, however we want to categorize it, most people still struggle to have an elaborate emotional vocabulary. A lot of people are stuck with, well, there's happy, there's sad, there's angry, there's disappointed, embarrassed, like we have like such a small emotional vocabulary that when we experience something that we can't easily fit into one of those simple categories, then we're lost and we're confused. And that leads people back to a place of being overwhelmed by their emotions because they're like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't have a name, a label for this. And it's confusing. And they keep trying to fit it into one of those other categories that they're aware of. And it just isn't working for them. And so it just causes more anxiety and more turmoil for them because they don't know, like, what is this? And then I don't know what to do with it because I don't know what it is. And so that piece of unknowing, it does spark anxiety for people. And it causes them to push away more emotions because they're like, oh my gosh, this is so scary. This is, such an unsettling experience. So I do try to help people to broaden their emotional vocabulary, even if you make up a word. I mean, I don't think it matters, if you have a word that aligns with everybody else, or if you have, an emotion that you just call it's blah, if you can recognize blah when it shows up and you have a sense of what to do when it shows up, then you're helping yourself and that's all that matters. But I do try to help people to expand that vocabulary. If there is a word in existence that helps to match with their experience, awesome. If there isn't, make up one so that you can keep progressing.
Okay. So what you're saying is you see that when people have a relatedness to an emotion, it's actually easier for them to be with than something that is different because they then go into overwhelm.
Yes, people get afraid of their emotions very easily.
Yeah. Can be, yeah. Fear is a big one. And you wrote to me, you said you'd like to speak about the power of knowing and living your personal value work. So yeah, what does that look like?
Okay. So I think the people who are in the workforce nowadays are more tuned in to how they feel about the work that they're doing versus, like 70 years ago, that didn't matter. Like nobody cares about your feelings and how you feel about the work. Just show up, get the work done, get your paycheck, and keep going. And so nowadays, I do think it matters a lot more to people that they feel good and they feel comfortable about the job they're showing up to, the work that they're actually doing. They want it to feel meaningful. They want it to feel purposeful. And in order to get there, coming back to knowing yourself, and part of knowing yourself is knowing your values. Like what's important to you? Because having the biggest paycheck isn't the most important to everybody. Some people, they value having time with their family. And so they may be willing to do a different type of work if it's going to allow them to have that time with their family. Years and years and years ago, I worked with a gentleman who he could care less about his job description. The only thing he cared about is this going to give me enough money to go on my next vacation? That was his value, you know? And there's nothing wrong with whatever people value, but I do believe that people live a happier life and they live a life that they feel is more fulfilled when they're doing things that align with their personal values. And especially since work is always going to be a part of our lives, because we have to have a way of living and supporting ourselves and getting the things that we want and we need. And so work is a part of that. And I think people are just better people when they're doing things that align, with the things that truly matter.
So you see a link between personal values and purpose from what I hear here.
Yes, there's definitely a link between them. And I think that link can extend into whatever work people are doing so that they feel like their whole life is purposeful and fulfilled and valuable rather than feeling like, okay, well, I have to stop living this meaningful life to go to work.
What is purpose for you, Helen? And is it inevitable?
I do believe that everyone has a purpose in life. I think it's very different for each and every one of us. And I think that's why it's so elusive because there isn't just like a place that you can go and somebody hands you this paper and says, here's your purpose. It's a personal journey that we go through. And that journey is revealing different parts of our purpose. And I think that purpose can still change. I think sometimes in life, a person's purpose can be that teacher for someone of just showing up and, providing a simple lesson, but that becomes something that is so impactful for another person's life. And so I think purpose can definitely change as we go through life. It's not like one set purpose, that's it, that's all. I do think that, we do evolve, we do grow and we learn. And as we grow, I think that purpose for us grows as well. And I just think we have to be open to the fact that we're not all meant to be these famous people who are going to change the whole entire world. Maybe sometimes your purpose is to change your family or to change a community. I mean, but it's not even, I use the word change, but I don't want to put that weight on people of making them feel responsible for actually changing people. You can't do that. But to say that you can be that influential piece that allows people to feel safe to change.
What is your purpose?
My purpose. In the last few years, I believe my purpose in this moment of my life is to use the knowledge and the skills that I have to help people become better parents.
Okay. And how can someone become a better parent? Can you give some tips to the audience?
So, yeah, I do have lots of resources and information that I put out there, but I really focus on 5 central things for parents. The first thing is you have to be consistent. Consistency goes a long, long ways, for kids and for people in general. 2, you have to be nurturing. And so what nurturing really is tuning into the needs of your children. And for each child, that can be different. It can look different. And so you have to be willing to shift how you parent according to the needs of each child and not just be static and think that, oh, well, this is how I am and how I am is sufficient for all the kids, no matter their developmental stages, no matter, their needs or whatever. This is how I'm going to be and this is it. So nurturing is being able to adapt to the actual needs of your children. 3, you have to be able to guide children. You, they're looking to parents as, hey, prepare me for the world. What is the world expecting of me, behavior wise, in terms of social norms and things of that nature? So you have to guide your children so that they're actually prepared to be a part of the bigger world. And then the 2 skills that I think are the most important in parents doing these 3 things is listening to your children, and then also how you talk to your children is also very, very important because they're constantly learning from parents. Parents are always the first role model for how to be a person.
I have a 2-year-old son, and
Mhm.
he's currently going through a thing with the binky, we call it. It's like the dummy. We're getting him ready for the time where the dummies need to go on to the next children. And the consistency currently is he can have the dummy in the bedroom when he sleeps, but he can't have it when he comes out. He now gives it to me when he comes out. He gets the choice. Does he want to stay in the bedroom or does he want to come out? And he's learning this. And it's like, I really
Good.
hear the whole consistency thing that you have. And it's like, it's not to bring any emotion, is it, to any moment with the children? It's like, it can be the emotions. We can just hold them in that.
Right.
Um, I really see that emotional regulation can be taught at such a young age with a parenting style that allows them to feel. And it's one of my
Yes.
passions in my career to help children to be able to emotionally regulate young. And perhaps they can become better leaders for our next generation of world. Can you speak into this from your experience of how we can take our children to be healthier, emotionally regulated children so they become better adults?
Right, right. So again, consistency is huge. I think people underestimate the power of consistency because when children live in at least a somewhat predictable environment, they know that, oh, when I wake up, mom or dad is going to be there and I'm going to get breakfast. And, somebody's going to help me get dressed. And then we're going to go to this place or we're going to do these things. When they have some sense of predictability about their environment, it allows them to get out of fight or flight, where they have to just worry about survival all day long. And it allows them to actually start to master the things around them. So this is where children are really going to start building those developmental skills and everything that they need, to be successful in school and to be successful in life. They're, they have the ability to actually start mastering those things because they're not constantly worried about survival. They're not worried about, am I going to eat today? Am I going to get enough to eat today? Am I going to be safe today? Where am I going to be? Who's going to take care of me? Can I trust these people? So when there's consistency, it allows children to come out of survival mode and to truly thrive and to move forward in life. And it's huge for them to be able to master, just life skills, to master, okay, here's what's expected. I can do this. I can do that. This builds on self-confidence, self-esteem, self-worth, all of these things, because as they see what they can do and they start building their own sense of independence and they learn that they can rely on themselves to do certain things. Not that they're 100% independent. Children understand this, that they need adults. And that's why parenting is so important because children understand they need bigger people to help them survive. And so when those people are showing up consistently and they know that they're safe and they know that they don't have to worry about survival, they thrive. they grow, they build all the other necessary skills.
Yeah, I agree with this. I think for all of us, adults and children, we're either in a state of survival or we're in a state of creation. And it sounds like you're helping children to learn that difference and to learn how to create moment by moment, which is beautiful.
Yes, awesome. It is so beautiful to see it and to see how much children will change when I help the parents to be what the children need them to be.
So you help the parents to move into thriving first, do you? And then they can help the children to be there.
Absolutely. Because I do think a lot of a lot of parents are in that survival mode themselves, where, they're just constantly battling one anxiety after the next anxiety. And because there's no sense of calm and consistency within them, then they don't know how to create it in their children either.
Yeah. So is your work with the children or the adults or both?
I primarily work with parents now. Once upon a time, I did do a lot of work, just with children. But if you do a lot of work with children, you realize it doesn't take long before, if the parents aren't at a certain place, it just kind of undoes whatever work that you're doing with the children, because that's the environment they have to live in. And no matter what you do with a child for an hour or a couple of hours a week, it's not enough to support the rest of their life, when they're in an environment that constantly keeps taking them back to survival. So at this point in time, I primarily work with parents in making sure parents are able to create and sustain the environment that's necessary for children to thrive.
I hear that being grounded and it can create a permanent, long-term shift for the whole family. Yeah. Helen, amazing work you're doing. Thank you so much. I hear you making a big difference to your community and your clients. Thank you for being with me here today on True North Alignment.
Thank you so much for having me here. I appreciate our time together.
And if anyone wants to reach out to you to ask any questions or connect, what's the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn is probably the best and easiest way for anyone to reach me. So it's just Helen Hicks, HelenHicks. If anyone is interested in the information I have out there, I have courses on Udemy for parenting and for leadership. It's on Udemy courses. So udemy.com/user/Helen-Hicks-3. And then I have a parenting app, which is on studio.com/apps/Helen-V.
And to those of you who've joined us today, thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you next week in True North Alignment.
Thank you for being here. Take a moment. Where are you in alignment? Because in True North, nothing underneath your actions distorts them. And from that place, purpose becomes inevitable. See you next time.